Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining Chris and I here at the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast. I had to think about that for a second. See, Friday, it does that to you. Anyway, so we're glad you could join us, and we're going to have a little fun today. We're going to carry on with our driver qualification series, and today we're going to talk about the application form. Different things that you need to know about it, how to understand it and whatnot, and we'll provide you some guidance to some recommendations. So with no further ado, Chris, my buddy and co-host, let's get her going.
Hey, well, and we're going to be hitting common errors.
Mm-hmm.
Because, John, when you go out to see clients, don't you often see the same error? It's almost as if you go like, WTF, guys can't, so.
It's a fairly simple document, you would think, but apparently everybody construes it in a different fashion.
Yes, it's so true. Well said.
Yep.
And for those who go cross-border, I thought we would start off by, if I can find it, where to go, right there. Look at you. You're doing some funky stuff.
Ooh, it's Crazy Friday down here in Langton.
Okay, let me see if I can fix that.
There we go.
Kind of. All right, so what I wanted to show everybody was if you are a cross-border guy, gal, trucking company, CVR holder, whatever, it starts with the FMCSAs.
Yep.
And what amazes me is people don't realize that there are rules here, and they actually stipulate quite specifically what needs to be on the application form.
Yep.
And Johnny, how often do you look at an application form and it does not have the name and the address of the employing motor carrier?
A lot of times at the top, it just says driver application.
Yeah. And yet, as our audience can plainly see right here, it says it's got to have, let's go back. Let's give our audience some perspective, perhaps, on why is it so important to have a great driver file, and it starts with an application form.
Yep. So, you have your basic compliance. There are regulatory, just as we're talking here, 391.21, regulatory compliance that has to be met. We need to make sure that the driver is qualified to operate for us. And that's why a lot of times we call it a driver qualification file. I think probably Section A right at the top there really spells it out good. A person shall not drive a commercial motor vehicle unless he or she has completed and furnished the motor carrier that employs him or her with an application for employment that meets the requirements of paragraph B of this section. So this is where it's so important to have this information, and it needs to be complete, correct,
Yep. Sorry, did you just stop there? Complete and correct?
Yes, I did. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I did my sentence silly like.
I was waiting for another one. But hey.
So was I.
But you're absolutely right. And of course, the next thing is if this applicant is hired and has a serious crash, this document here, becomes evidence in court.
Yes. Correct.
And if the first thing the lawyer can point out is they don't even have their name on the application form, do they really even know how to hire a driver? So
exactly.
It just, I tell you, it just confounds me. So the name on the application form. And of course, the next thing, the federal motor carrier, and let me ask you this. I'm talking about federal motor carrier here, and the cross-border companies. How about the companies that stay here in Ontario only or Canada only? Is this a good tool? What are your thoughts?
Oh, this is best practice by all means. Yes.
Right.
So whether you run a cross-border Canada or within your province. This is excellent. I think we've all said that many times. The federal motor carrier regulations in the U.S. set Canada up for best practice. So it's great. Just apply this across the board to every driver you bring on.
Yes, and sorry, for some reason I had the chat buried. We do have Chad of
Chad. Hey, Chad.
Of Ready Check. That's Ready. He doesn't know how to spell check. CHEK. All right. So
he probably didn't have enough room. He had to cut back one letter.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but he dropped the C from Ready Check. So if you're looking for Chad, you can go to readycheck.com, but without the C. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Good morning, Chad. So yes, it's absolutely best practice. And in the CVOR manual, a lot of this, not all of it, because in the CVOR manual, I don't believe they make reference specifically to the carrier's address, but it does say you got to have an application form in the CVOR manual. So a lot of this, as you say, is just best practice.
Yeah.
The name.
Well, so how about this question? Why do I need the employer's name on the application? They're not applying for a job, so why do we have to have the employer's name on the application?
I don't know. Tell me.
It's because we need to know who we're applying to. So because you could be applying to multiple jobs, you could maybe work part-time for this carrier, part-time for that carrier, part-time for another carrier, or I quit this one and go to that one. Well, you just can't take the application with you. So it has to be unique to the motor carrier so that we can say. So that's why you want to have the motor carrier's name and address on there. Just helps to complete the file.
Well, and at the top here somewhere it says the motor carrier is the one who must furnish the applicant here, furnished by the motor carrier.
Yep.
So that, as you're saying, a driver can't just create one application form and quickly apply to 10 carriers.
Yeah. Well, and that's a perfect example where some drivers will provide you with a resume and say, well, here it is. This is all you need. Well, no, that doesn't have the motor carrier's name on it. And it doesn't have particular details and credentials that the motor carrier is looking for. So hence why this has got some excellent guidelines to say, no, this is what's required on an application form. So,
yeah. Hey, the next one, 3, the address at which the applicant has resided for 3 preceding years.
Yep.
And it's the same in Canada. Every application form has, give us at least 3 years of your residence on there.
Exactly.
How often do you see an application form that doesn't have a date? Number 4.
Oh, jeez. It's so simple. It's like, hey, they're applying for a job. When are they applying for this? That would be nice to know. Yeah.
Well, I suggest you also need a document that says what date was the person hired on, because it would be nice to know when they actually started.
Well, we've both seen a number of times where your application might be about 3-4 pages long, and usually on the last page of the application, there's a section down the bottom that says, "Was the driver hired? Was the driver employed for this and whatnot?" And a lot of times that area is blank, so we don't even know what date the driver was hired. We would have a date at the top possibly that says when they applied for the job, but it doesn't actually say it was hired, and it doesn't say who approved the hire. So these sections are blank sometimes, and it's like, these are important information to have in there.
You and I can both audit driver files and probably find mistakes in, I would say, in most.
Yes.
But what we're trying to highlight today, at least what I'm focusing on, are the most common ones.
Yes.
And stay tuned, because we're going to give you some best practices when we start talking about CVORs and PSPs and things like that. So stick around. All right. The applicant, where are we? Number 5, we need a driver's license. Basically is what that's saying, because it's got to have the issuing state or province and the expiry date and all that. And in Ontario, both sides.
Yes. Yes, a lot of people forget this and they just get the front of the driver's license, make a copy of it. No, you need both sides. There's information on the back of that driver's license. So I always say, it doesn't matter what state or province you're operating in, best practice, get both sides every time.
Yeah. Yep. So, now here's one of my favorite little ones, number 7. Let's see if we can't make that even bigger yet. Number 7, Johnny, 3 years. Whoops.
Yes.
Where did it go? Where did it go?
Up. Oh, did it?
There we go. Number 7, 3 years of job history, basically, preceding the application.
Yep.
Johnny,
exactly.
Is this only truck driving information?
No, this is all information. So even if you drove maybe for a year or something like that, and then prior to that you were working at the grocery store or pumping gas at the gas station, we need 3 years of history. It's to find out so we can do reference checks and whatnot. So you have to provide the details of your employment. Contact information, emails, phone numbers, whatever, where you were, location, and timelines from when did you start that job and when did you end that job before you moved on to the next one.
And we're going to get into, and I'll show you an application form in a minute, but we're going to get into some common errors again in it.
Yes.
And the reason it's so important, we're going to hit some of it right here, but the next thing, number 8, a list of all violations. Well, this is the MVR, but also here in Ontario, the CVOR safety manual says you've got to know about all the previous violations as well. So this isn't a best practice. This is right in the CVOR manual, even though in Ontario you can't get a ticket for it, but you got to know about it for 3 years prior to the application form.
Yep.
All right. Johnny, what's number 9?
Number 9 is a statement saying that you only have one license and that if your license is, for whatever reason, suspended, denied, revoked, canceled, or whatever, you will inform the employer.
Yippers! And I know you like this one. Well, it is something that a lot of employers don't have the driver sign. And if it's not covered somewhere, either in your policy manual or as part of your application process, why would the driver tell you? You never told them to tell you.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
Number 10, here we go. A list of names and addresses. Listen to this, everybody, because this is a common error. A list of names and addresses of the applicant's employers during the I can't even read. During the 3 years preceding the date, you've got to have the names and the addresses as well as, so you got to have the names and the addresses, the dates, the reason for leaving. How often do you see the reason for leaving just blank, Johnny?
Most times.
Yeah. And the next one here, you got to have these 2 questions on your application form, assuming that somebody's applying after 2004.
Right.
So, and on a Canadian application form, I often see these missing as well. What's your take? What's your experience?
Oh, exactly. Same thing. I think we fall under the pretense that, if he's going cross-border, we got to do a drug and alcohol test anyway. Yes, but hang on. Was he ever subjected to alcohol and drug and alcohol testing prior to coming on board with this operation? Was he subject to the FMCSRs? Meaning, was he traveling into the U.S.? He or she traveling into the U.S. before? So these are things that are very important. And the concern is, if you're missing this information, or let me rephrase that. If the applicant fails to provide this information in the application form, then that should raise a red flag. Why have they not answered these questions? Why have they not provided this information?
Right. And look, I made up a fictitious company, Safety Dog Transport.
Woohoo! What's Safety Dog Transport Hall, I wonder?
A bunch of BS, I think. But I just wanted to show this because here's those 2 questions that we're talking about. And again, can I make that bigger? Is that possible? No, I'm screwing it all up, aren't I? Anyways, the other part of it here is all of this stuff needs to be completed.
Yep.
As we just showed you in the U.S. law, but it's a best practice here in Canada. The name and the address, the phone number, and the dates and the reason for leaving all have to be there. And then, of course, these two questions, which are just yes or no questions. But they're simple, but they got to be there. What else is happening, Johnny, in the way of common area? Oh, do you want to address the one here where the dates? And
yes.
You know where I'm going with that one?
Yep. So a lot of times, you'll put your date in here of when you hired on with this company and when you left this company, along with the reason for leaving. But one of the things that employers need to be cautious of is looking at those dates and looking for gaps between one employer to another, so that you can ask those questions. Oh, this is interesting. You worked at this place for 6 months. And then it was 3 months before you went to work at the other place. What were you doing during that 3-year period? What is that gap? Were you working for somebody else under the table? Did you go on vacation, move back into the basement of your mother's house? Whatever it be. So it's a matter of what are those gaps? Why are those gaps there? And that's what's important. So,
yeah, no gaps.
Yes, exactly.
And the other thing that I want people to look at is to match the dates with the driver's abstracts, and which also could be the PSP report. And if you're not familiar with PSP, pre-employment screening program, a U.S. thing that is very similar, by the way. It was based on the Ontario truck driver CVOR. So it's similar to that, but it has names of employers and inspections and things like that, same as the CVOR. So you want to match the employment date that you see here to the documents that you have in your file that would verify this, because if you don't, the darn lawyers will.
Yep, exactly. So what would it tell you then, Chris, if you were looking at this and you found a gap between those dates, say between one employer to another, say you've seen a 2 or 3 month window that wasn't covered off, and yet when you did your cross-referencing and found something on the PSP report that showed that he got stopped for an inspection, and it was with a motor carrier that was not listed as one of the two during that time period, what would that kind of indicate and tell you?
Well, it is the driver. One, is he telling me the truth? Is the driver being, we'll call it creative. We'll be polite. Is the driver being creative in his job history, trying to hide a past employer that he doesn't want me to contact to do the references? So that would be my concern.
Sure. Well, and it's possible that he may have had some major altercations or a crash or something, and he doesn't want it known that he was terminated for a crash. It was a short period of time. No, I don't even want you to know that I had that. Well, unfortunately, it's going to come out, and especially if there's a gap. Then the employer does his investigation properly. The question should be, well, why is this gap, and why did I find this on your CVOR or your PSP profile?
And the other point there that I'd like to make is drivers have caught on that if they have, perhaps, and I'll make a number up, 6 employers in the past 2 years, they become very difficult to hire.
Yes.
So they want to drop an employer or 2 or 3 so that it looks much better on their application form. Well, this is what your job is to ferret through all the information. And if it's possible, you use all this information and you come up with the conclusion to hire the driver. Because, again, going back to the worst case scenario, you're in court and it comes out in court because the lawyers will dig much better typically than I did. And they're going to prove that he had 6 jobs. And, now that doesn't match your hiring standards. And why did you hire? Oh, my goodness. Going down the
and then add to the fact that, you collect this previous employer reference information. The employer must act on it now. we'll talk about a bit more about that in another episode with reference checks.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of use an example that I just recently ran upon. Was they said the employer said they did the reference checks, but interesting enough, they had no proof of the reference checks. And when when I cross-referenced the application with the driver abstract, we found a falsified driver abstract. He had altered the abstract and said that he was a driver a year before he actually got his license. And it was interesting because what triggered it was the company had just recently pulled new abstracts on all the drivers. Okay. And it was in this particular driver that I had selected, yet they did not cross-reference the existing abstract with the previous abstract. Because I brought it up and went, whoa, this is interesting. He got his license in 2021. They said, no, 2020. I'm going, well, this says it. Oh, it must be an error. I'm going, well, I don't think the government of Ontario makes errors on their, do you want to validate this? So when we started looking and then we cross-referenced it with the dates, we found out. I said, have you called this number? I bet you this number doesn't even work. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you, truck drivers are pretty smart.
Correct.
That's
savvy guys. Well, they want a job, right? They want the job.
And so, and anyways, we're nearing the end of this, the application form part. Let me just scroll down a little bit more. So that was page 1, basically, and page 2 now, because this is all job history. But make sure for those people that are watching this, that all of this information is completed and that you go back the 3 years minimum of employment. Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to say something there.
Nope. No. I'm just agreeing with you.
And if I switch back, can I switch back to the Federal Motor Carrier to find the 7-year? Here it is, number 11.
Right there. Yep.
So many people say, well, what is this 3 years? And then I got to go back an extra 7. What? I'm confused. And it's not confusing. What it says here is you've got to go back an extra 7 years over and above the 3 already mentioned. If there's an if there. For drivers applying to operate a commercial motor vehicle defined, the names for the 7-year period preceding the 3 years, if the applicant was operator of a commercial motor vehicle. So basically, if the applicant was doing truck driving work, operating or using the CDL, commercial driver's license, in the preceding 7 years, they've got to list that on their application form, which makes a grand total of 10 years.
10 years.
Which is why we have this statement up at the top that says, please provide a complete record of all employment, starting with your current employer. I can't believe many drivers start with their oldest, but for the past 3 years, including any unemployment or self-employment, and then please also provide all commercial driving experience for the past 10.
Yes.
So we're taking it out of the Federal Motor Carrier and applying it to this.
Yep. So. And I know we've seen this many times, and I know we encourage applicants and employers as well, that if you've got like 6 years of driving experience and then 4 prior to that was doing something else, do yourself a favor and don't create a gap. We're looking for 10 years. So 3 years needs to be verified. And then the next 3 would be nice to be listed. But rather than leaving it blank to go, oh, well, I didn't do anything for the 4 years and question it, then go, oh, no, I was in school during that time, or I worked at the grocery store at that time. Okay, perfect. That's all you need to know. It helps to close that gap to say, what did you do for 10 years, particularly if you were driving truck beyond that first 3 years.
Yes, and the other point I would also add to that is, let's say you only go back 6 years in job history, because prior to 6 years, there was no CDL activity, or the driver didn't have a driver's license. Well, write that on the application form.
Exactly.
No previous truck driving experience after the 6 years.
Perfect.
Or the other thing I would say, because this often happens, you only go back a number of years. The 3 years, there is no exception, but beyond that, just immigrated to Canada 5 years ago.
Perfect. Exactly.
Is the other reason you don't go back to 10.
Right. Right.
So
helps to complete that gap process, right? Making sure there are no gaps. It answers the question and go, oh, okay, no problem. We're good. We have all the information we need. Now, interesting here, Chad.
Question.
Yep. Chad's got a comment here. Do you list jobs even if you're driving for someone who stays within the 160 kilometer radius? Yes. Doesn't matter kilometers. It's all about the driving. The fact that you're a driver holding a commercial driver's license.
And of course, that's important to somebody like Chad because his company supplies the hours of service and vehicle inspection documentation for those carriers who stay within the 160. And does a great job doing it.
It simplifies the process. I love his tool. It's great. Oh, love this section.
Well, sorry, I was just leaving your comment alone there. Okay, you love this section. Well, you talk about this section.
Yeah. Driving history and experience. This is, oh my gosh, I don't know how many applications I see where this is blank. We don't have any information. I think the driver thinks, well, hey, you've got my previous employers. What do you need this for? Well, this helps us to better understand what type of commercial vehicles you have operated over the course of your employment with others. So, like, what the heck? So,
yeah. And, well, I mean, you are supposed to, best practices, NATME, the CDS program, Certified Director of Safety, a number of other programs say that you should have a job description or a task analysis. Well, if you've got no flat deck experience, why am I hiring you?
Yes,
this would help. This part here would help me determine, do you have flat deck experience, tanker experience? What experience do you have?
That's right. That's right.
And again, the lawyers are going to go through this much more thoroughly than we will.
Exactly.
So that's the driving.
And then even as you go, and then as you go down to the next section, your collisions, your traffic convictions, your driver's licenses that you've held in the past, because maybe you've changed provinces or state, so it's like, oh yeah, I was in BC for 4 of those 5 years, and now I've come to Ontario. Okay, well, what was your driver's license number and information out there? What endorsements did you have? So
perfect. And then look at this. I very seldom do I ever see this checked off, yes or no. But have you ever been denied?
Yes.
A license?
Correct.
And, drivers hate answering that. Well, of
course, I know.
They hate answering unless they can check no.
Right.
And has any license, permit, or privilege ever, because driving is a privilege, let's not forget that.
Yes, it is.
Have ever been suspended or revoked?
Yeah.
So
again, you could be with the new laws in place now, stunt driving, distracted driving, right? Maybe even I didn't get my medical examination submitted to the MTO in time, so all of a sudden I get downgraded. Well, hey guys, that's having your A license revoked. So you need to answer the question appropriately and provide an explanation if you need to say what happened. Even in your car, if you've been stopped for drinking and driving, but you were within that tolerance limit where they said, we're just going to suspend you for 3 days and then you're good to go. That still needs to be declared.
Absolutely. And unfortunately for truck drivers, it may immediately put the application form into the garbage.
Exactly.
Because does a trucking insurance company want to insure somebody with that type of a violation? Different, perhaps, depending on company policies, once you're employed and that happens to you. But certainly if it happened within the last 3 years, I suspect you are not going to be switching companies very soon.
Right. Well, and the thing is, don't think you can hide it, because if the employer does their job properly and cross-references your driver abstract with your application, and it says here, oh, he was suspended for beyond the alcohol limit, and it was just a 3-day suspension. It's like, well, yeah, it happened in your car, but it's still the point. You didn't declare it. So now my question is, you falsified on the application. And people get a little concerned going, well, if you falsified this, what else have you falsified within this document?
Well, and who wants to hire a liar?
Yes, exactly.
Because, what exactly to your point, what else are they going to lie about?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
We've just hit about the 30-minute mark, so we got to wrap this up. But
perfect.
Do you want to address this one? Because how many times do I see it not signed?
Oh, God, yes. This is that. Well, it's perfect. It's just what we talked about. This is saying that everything in here is true. I'm not falsifying anything, and everything is correct and accurate to the best of my knowledge, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you haven't signed it, that's a red flag right away. So I would be thinking the applicant, did he just miss it, or did he really not want to sign this? So this is where it should create questions and having a conversation with the applicant.
Well, and if I go back to, because you just reminded me of what I think is an important point. Let's say a driver leaves the collision thing. Thanks, Chad. I'll just throw that on there too. But leaves the collision or the convictions blank with no indication that he actually answered the question.
Right.
Again,
right.
What happens there, especially with a collision, when you question the driver because you've discovered the collision, the driver goes, oh, yeah, I left it blank because I wanted to talk to you about it to see if it should be listed. Right? Well,
yeah. And so the opposite is also true, where I haven't had any collisions. Okay, then put none.
Right.
That would be great, because then it's like, oh, okay, perfect. He's had no. And then as my cross-reference would prove, oh, yeah, there's nothing on any of the abstracts, nothing on the PSP. And his previous employer said, oh, no, he's never had a crash. So, but it helps to show a complete process.
Yes. And just last things here. Most companies abide by what's written here. The driver abstracts have to be within 30 days of this application. The CVOR abstract, if you're Ontario, or now Alberta too, should be within 30 days. And if you're asking for a criminal record search, the standard is within 90 days. Most companies would accept it. You furnish those documents, you sign it and date it, and Bob's your uncle. The application form is completed. Hey!
Yay! We're getting ready to talk about, are you a worthy applicant to be hired now?
Oh, lordy. So a lot of problems with an application form.
Yes, there's lots there. As simple as the document looks, there's lots that needs to be double-checked, rechecked, and make sure there's no gaps in it.
Yeah. Johnny, I think that was awesome. For the aspiring safety people out there, I think they're going to find this, well, I take that back. I know they're going to find this informative.
Exactly.
For some truck drivers out there, I think they would also find this informative as to the reason why is the application to become a truck driver so dang long. And because honestly, I do feel sorry for the truck drivers when they have to complete this document, especially, I mean, right now it's pretty easy. The truck driver can pick the company that they want to go to and then just complete one application form.
Lots of opportunities out there.
Back in my day, I might have to complete 3 or 4 application forms to get one job because it wasn't as easy as it is today.
Yeah. So. Well, a perfect example, like I know there's a job fair that, is it coming up or is it just
tomorrow?
Tomorrow, okay. So yeah, a big job fair. You might, as a driver, go to that job fair and there might be 4 or 5 potential opportunities that you like. Yeah. Keep in mind, you're going to fill out an application for each one of them. So, so be as truthful as you should be, because it could determine whether you get a job or not.
And I mean, lastly, resumes are great. They assist you in filling out the application form.
Yeah, exactly.
But now you can see by the regulations that the companies should not accept only a resume. Right. You need to have this all done. So, hey, great show, John. Wishing you all the best. Next week, you're doing your motorcycle driving. Yay!
Yep. So Then we'll be out going brum, brum, brum.
Well, no, didn't you get a Harley? What did you buy?
It kind of sounds like that, yeah.
Okay, well, you didn't get, anyways, we won't go there. All right, John. So that is the Trucking Risk and Insurance podcast for this week, where we are continuing our series of driver files. Truck driver files is the series, and today's episode was talking about the application form. Stay with us. I believe we've got a guest for next week. But after that, we will be continuing with the truck driver application series. So thanks for joining us, John Farquhar, and I wish you all the best.